A very warm welcome to one and all to this discussion on nurturing principled politicians in contemporary Indian politics, organized by Indian School of Democracy. Today, we are honored to have with us Professor Nageshwar, uh, who is an analyst of contemporary socio-economic and political issues, a professor of journalism in the Osmania University, and a former member of Legislative Council in the undivided state of Andhra Pradesh. Also, Professor Nageshwar said that he's going to contest in the upcoming graduate constituency MLC elections. Uh, so he will be representing the constituency of Hyderabad, Mahabub Nagar, and Rangareddy. Professor Nageshwar, sir. So, if I may start with the first question. Being a professor, a senior journalist, and a political analyst, you have been doing some exceptional work. In spite of being so active in public life, you still chose to become a politician. What is your inspiration to enter into politics? Any specific incidents you would like to share with us?
Well, let me first clarify. I don't call myself a mainstream politician. In fact, I'm a journalist by training, teacher by profession, and legislator by accident. So I've been analyzing politics, writing about politics, critically looking at politics. So all through my life as a journalist, as a public speaker, have been performing the role of a public intellectual. As the eminent historian Rabila Thapa defines, public intellectual is someone who is in a professionally respected position and seeks explanation for the public actions. So I believe that a person like me, whether in journalism or in academics, should always perform the role of a questioning, a critically looking at things. So the critical adversarial role I've been performing right through my life. So I thought I've been critiquing politics, I've been talking about politics, I've been analyzing politics. But politics need to be changed. As a philosopher said, philosophers interpret the world in many ways, but the thing is to change it. So we may interpret politics in many ways, but the reality is that we need to change politics. In a democracy, politics is not a bad word. People in politics made it a bad activity. So politics is an instrument of social change. Politics is a vehicle for transformation. So you cannot imagine socio-economic transformation without changing the instruments of politics, instrumentality of politics, and the political institutions. So I believe firmly, no politics can never be a substitute to bad politics. It is the good politics that can substitute to the bad politics. As long as the well-meaning individuals, as long as honest people, as long as educated people remain aloof from politics, remain silent from politics, politics continue to degenerate. So we, the educated, are also responsible for the degeneration of the Indian polity. So I thought it is my humble right to contribute to the change in the political discourse of the country, political discourse of at least this part of the nation. So that is precisely why I contested in the legislative for the Legislative Council when it was revived in 2007 in United Andhra Pradesh and continued to be in the Council of Undivided State till the bifurcation. In fact, I was also in the Telangana Legislative Council from June 2nd to March 29th also. Nearly 9 months I was part of the Telangana Legislative Council also. So subsequently my profession was calling. So my academic interest, my journalistic interest have persuaded me not to contest in 2015. So I have won as an independent candidate in 2007, defeating all the political parties in a 56-member contest. Altogether, 56 people have contested. All the mainstream political parties with all their money power, muscle power, manpower, and all kinds of powers were in the fray. Still, the graduates of Hyderabad, Mahbub Nagar, and Rangareddy undivided districts have I have displayed so much of confidence in me, and that's how I could win the Legislative Council elections twice. But I still believe that the general elections is something difficult for people like me. I have unsuccessfully contested Lok Sabha elections in 2014 as an independent candidate and miserably lost, which only reveals that the society is still not ready to embrace the or independent candidates to the Lok Sabha and to the Assembly, because people see the elections to Assembly and Lok Sabha as an elections to change the people in power. So that's precisely where they still vote for political parties. And the electoral system is also unfriendly to the independent candidates. But at least in the Legislative Council, I could make a difference.
Okay. Uh, so, sir, you took a sabbatical from politics in the last 5 years, and then now in the coming upcoming months, you will be contesting your third MLC election. Um, so, how is Professor Nageshwar sir of 2007 different from Professor Nageshwar sir of today? What have your learnings been so far in
Well,
politics?
let me first clarify that I've never taken a sabbatical either from academics or from politics at any point of time.
Okay.
So to be in politics doesn't mean to contest elections. To be in public life doesn't mean to be in power. You can still be in public life without being in power. You can still be in politics without contesting elections also. What do you mean by in politics? In politics essentially mean you are trying to follow the politics, question the politics, understand the politics, and contribute to the political discourse, which I've been doing whether I was a member of the Legislative Council or not. Similarly, I have never given up academics also. I was on leave for 8 years. Even during 2007 and 2015, when I was a legislator, technically I was on leave from Osmania University, but I was a visiting professor at Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences, taking two courses, and that too 3 days in a week. I used to travel 60 kilometers, 30 kilometers up and 30 kilometers down to teach the students there. And I was teaching at the National Academy of Administration, Missouri, National Police Academy for the IAS and IPS probationers and senior level officers too. So I never stopped teaching while in politics, and I never stopped politics while in teaching. So politics and academics, politics and journalism have always been dovetailed in my life, and I still remain the same and I'll continue to remain the same. Now I'm contesting for the Legislative Council elections from the graduate constituency of Hyderabad, Mehboob Rangareddy, the same constituency which I represented twice in the March 2021 elections. Still, I will continue to be in academics, I'll continue to be in journalism, because I believe at least journalism, academics, and politics converge in my case. So there is a convergence of the three. But there is certainly a fundamental difference between, as you have asked me, what was Professor K. Nageshwar in 2007 and what is Professor K. Nageshwar in 2020. Well, firstly, in 2007, I was not just a professor, I was also a public speaker to an extent, and I was a television analyst by then. I was a columnist in newspapers. But that activity got amplified in the last 13 years, ever since I contested for the first time in 2007. I have written thousands of articles and I have commented on almost every television channel in Telugu and in most of the English TV channels. So my journalistic activity got multiplied in this time. And thanks to the advent of social media, so I have a huge presence on social media. So I was with the print when the print media was ruling. I entered television when television rocked, and I'm into the social media when social media is all pervasive. So I have been adapting to the changing media environment. I believe in the Darwin's theory of evolution. Unless you adapt to the changing environment, you can't survive. It is the survival of the fittest. So I have been surviving precisely because I've been adapting to the ever-changing environment. But I never lost my roots. I continue to write for newspapers. I continue to comment on television. I continue to be active on social media. I have a huge presence of around 5,25,000 subscriber base. which is enormous by any standards. And that too, all this happened in the last 2 years alone. So I could reach millions and millions of Telugu speaking viewers now when compared to the 2007. Subsequently, people have seen my 8 years of work as a legislator. I do believe a member of the upper house has very limited opportunities and a very limited space in the constitutional scheme of things. Though we call it a bicameral legislature, the reality is that the Legislative Council has only a limited opportunity. But I never had any inhibitions or any illusions about the role of the Legislative Council in a parliamentary democracy. I told that, in fact, I was never hesitant to tell the electorate also. There's a limited opportunity we have. And this is a platform where I can articulate. I've been articulating the public concerns through the media, through the social media. But when I articulate the public concerns from the platform called Legislative Council, its authenticity, its credibility, and its transformatory potential significantly vary. So that's precisely what motivated me to contest again in the election. So I'm more popular now, and people know me, what people understand me. People have seen me as a legislator, what I contributed to the lives of various sections of society.
Okay. Very glad to hear that, sir. As you said, in your past two MLC elections, your political opponents from the major political parties have used their muscle power and money power to try to win the elections. But despite that, you won with a very huge majority. So, what exactly is your unique selling point? What is your USP?
Well, more than the muscle power, it was money power and the manpower. Obviously, the kind of resources which a political party enjoy is mind-boggling. It's humongous compared to an individual like me. Well, I have the unique selling proposition for me was my connect with the public cause. So in my, ever since I passed out of the university, and in fact, while I was in university at all, so in the last over 3 decades of my life, I have been always articulating the public cause. So I have been significantly contributing to the popular narrative. I have been presenting a radically alternate socio-political and economic narrative. When the government tried to dismantle the public transport system in undivided state and also in Telangana, I was instrumental in presenting a completely different alternative. So on every aspect of public life, I have only given one example. So I have been vocal, not just in terms of articulating the people's concerns, but I have been active in presenting an alternate policy vision, which is quite different from that of the ruling establishment. So this, my ability and my identity as someone who presents an alternate viewpoint, somebody who questions without a fear or favor, is my unique selling proposition. And I have been doing it. I'll give you one example.
Yes, sir.
During the 2007 elections, I went to an Bus Bhavan. Bus Bhavan in Hyderabad means it's the headquarters of Andhra Pradesh Andhra Pradesh Road Transport Corporation at that time, and now the Telangana State Road Transport Corporation. There are hundreds of employees in that, and obviously the entire building was completely flooded with posters, huge cutouts, hoardings of candidates of major political parties. So my poster was almost invisible. So I went into the office and I was interacting with the people there. And the people told me, even the women employees told me, sir, anybody may have anything outside the building, but you are in our hearts and minds. Because when the government tried to dismantle the public transport system in the state, you were one who strongly resisted. You are one with your intellectual viewpoint, questioned the ruling narrative. So this contribution we shall never forget. So you go and ask any RTC family today, they will tell my name. So that is how the people will appreciate you, people will embrace you, People will love you and like you independent of their political affiliations. I'm telling you, people have voted for me irrespective of their political affiliations. Many people have voted for me even though they do not agree with me on several counts. There are people who do not agree with me at all, but still voted for me because they have agreed on one thing, that I should be in the legislative council. And that's the reality even today. You will see this in a much more effective manner, yeah, in these elections. You can see how it will play out, because I've been articulating the public concerns in a much more powerful manner thanks to the emerging media and social media ecosystem. So I firmly believe any aspiring leader should learn to advocate the public cause. Well, it is not something you learn, it is the passion you have, it is the commitment you have. When I started speaking for the society, when I started speaking for the people as a young man studying in the university, I never even imagined that I will one day contest for the legislative council. Almost to the 70% of my holidays, Sundays, summer vacations, I have never spent time in my home. I was never with my family. I was always moving across the now two Telugu states. I have delivered public speeches from public platforms at least from 130 towns across the two Telugu states. So I was not expecting anything in return. I was never even imagining, I didn't imagine that I will one day contest as an MLC. But I continue to do so because that I believe to be my responsibility as a public spirit individual, as someone who can understand things, who can comprehend things. It's my duty to communicate to the people. That I've been doing it independent of what I thought will be the dividend for that. I never thought that there will be any dividend for it also. Well, when in 2007, when the Legislative Council was suddenly revived, at least not for encouraging people like me, it was revived for the political purposes. But still, whatever may be the reason for the revival of the Legislative Council, I thought it's my responsibility to use this occasion to graduate from a level of articulating from public platforms and media to the houses of legislature, because that's where you can be a change maker to an extent at least. So my strong viewpoint is stand with the people, fight for the people, articulate on behalf of the people without fear or favor. People will love you,
Okay.
people will appreciate you, and people will vote for you also.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So you are someone who educates the society with facts, logic, and objectivity. But to remain objective in a post truth world is becoming very challenging for aspiring politicians. The easiest way to power seems to be to exploit the emotions of people and polarize the society. In such a scenario, is there a place for objectivity in politics?
I do agree. You have rightly said that. Sorry, sorry, I will start again.
Yeah.
Well, you have rightly observed, Aditya, this is a post-truth society.
Yeah.
We live in a very polarized environment. Socially undesirable attitudes, opinions may not be expressed, but people unconsciously fall victim to it. And sometimes they consciously embrace such socially undesirable values, opinions, and attitudes. I do agree with you. But that's precisely where the duty of people like me increases. So that's the way you have to play a much bigger role. So it is a difficult, it's arduous task, but not an impossible task. And it is a task which people educated have to perform. Because unless we change the popular political narrative, we cannot bring in a change in the society. So we need to do this independent of the fact that it is very difficult to do so. And it's extremely difficult to do so in a time when all kinds of parochial, emotional, extreme viewpoints gain higher currency than any logical, reasoned opinion. It is extremely difficult, I do agree. But fortunately, my experience suggests, at least on the media and social media, there is still a large number of well intended people. There is still a large constancy of well meaning people who are ready to appreciate, accept such views. Unfortunately, we are running away from the battle even before the battle has begun. So, what is the option for us? To wage a battle against parochialism, against obscurantism, against political expediency, against corrupt political culture, against the dishonest political culture, against the defection culture of defections. We really do not know which leader joins which party at what point of time. So we only believe that people may get elected from any party, but ultimately there will be clandestine deals. So in such a kind of a political climate, it's difficult to make people believe that you can bring in a change, you can bring in a difference. But that is something where your a necessity, your imperative increases. So when everything is fine, there's no need for you to enter politics. Everything is not fine, everything is not in order. Precisely there you need to play an important role.
Yes. Um, so, sir, about 3 months ago, you received death threats from an anonymous person. Normally, such warnings affect any person mentally, but you showed some exceptional courage in dealing with this incident. In this context, what is the secret of your calmness, and how should a politician handle themselves when faced with such threats?
Well, Aditya, when people threaten you because you're popular,
Yes.
people don't bother you when you're not popular. So if a traffic constable is worried of dust allergy, he can never perform his role. If a doctor is worried of contacting infections, he will never be a doctor. You'll see how our frontline health workers are fighting against one of the deadly pandemic, knowing fully well that they are vulnerable. How many doctors have lost their lives? How many health workers have lost their lives? They are aware, they are aware that they are going to face a problem. Their vulnerability increases. They know that they are susceptible to this, but still they are doing. So obviously, when you take up a social cause, when you take up a public cause, you are vulnerable. The only thing is the society has to protect. Society has to protect doctors, nurses, health workers, ward boys against the raging pandemic. So society has to protect the public intellectuals also. Because you're right, when death threat was heard, I spoke very clearly that I will not be cowed down by such kind of threats. In fact, my commitment to speak for people will increase. So I will speak with renewed vigor. Obviously, you will have to die one day. Can anyone prevent that? The human civilization has not reached a stage where science allows you to overcome the problem of death. So instead of dying out of fear every minute and every day, so we should be prepared for anything at any point of time. But that doesn't mean you will deliberately become vulnerable. You have to be very cautious. You have to take all the precautions. But ultimately, the society, social acceptability is the best protection and it is the deterrent against such kind of hooliganism. Well, this is an age where people are not ready to accept any kind of a balanced opinion. So the extreme viewpoints are legitimate. Look at the shouting matches on TV channels, which we call as TV debates. How extreme opinions are legitimized every day. The television debate looked like a belligerent confrontation. So we are living in a society where all kinds of extreme viewpoints are gaining currency. So if you run away from your responsibility, you are doing a great disservice to the society. History will judge you by the role you play. So if as someone who knows, as someone who understands, as someone who can articulate on behalf of the people, if I run away out of fear or favor, if I run away out of a fear of even death, well, history will judge me very badly. I don't want history to judge me very badly. I want history to judge me as a son of history who played his due role, who played his role properly.
Okay. So, what do you think are the fundamental skills that a political leader must possess?
Well, first of all, it's an empathy with the people. So when I say people, the disenfranchised, disempowered, the underprivileged, so the deprived, the people under, when I use the word underprivileged, it is not in terms of a political rhetoric. And the fundamental duty of a politician is to ensure that an every individual would be in a position to perform to the best of one's capability. So other factors, social, economic, or otherwise, should not hinder anyone from fully realizing one's own potential. So when you have that kind of a consciousness in defense of the people, concepts of justice, freedom, should always guide you in your path of politics. So the well-being of the people, raising the capabilities of the people. So that is something which a politician should always find happiness in. When when few people get benefited by you, so you derive an enormous happiness from it. So that is how you will have to have an empathy with the people. So the first thing is empathy with the people. Second thing is an ability to study the problems of the people. Third is ability to articulate the concerns of the people. Fourth is an ability to stand up to the pressures, stand up to the to all kinds of illusions, all kinds of so all kinds of allurements. So that is something where you need to guard yourself against all possible attractions in life. So if I really got a compromise, I would have been in parliament or a state cabinet long time. Just imagine, Aditya, I was a legislator defeating all the political parties as an independent candidate in 2007. I defeated again the major political party and won in 2009. So when
Yeah.
somebody could win two legislative council elections without the support of any major mainstream political party, you can imagine my utility value. I'm sure any political party would love to give me any position of power, but I believe that that's not satisfying for me. More satisfying thing is to play the role of a public intellectual who questions without fear or favor. So that is something I believe every aspiring, especially the young men and women who want to join politics, let us be change makers to an extent possible. Let us impact. It is the kind of impact factor we need to assess. So the life is very short. Nobody will live longer. You will not live for 100 years or 150 years. When life is too short, use the every second and every minute which you get for a purposeful role in society, for a meaningful role in society. So that is where you make and your life should make a difference in the lives of many people. So how will you make a difference in the lives of the people is something which need to guide you every moment.
Okay. Um, so, sir, as a public intellectual, before giving your opinion on a specific issue, how do you decide if it is the right opinion? What is the process to arrive at the right conclusion?
Well, I won't decide what is right opinion. I will only study the facts, systematically understand the facts, look at the facts from a holistic perspective, look at the facts from a common man's perspective. So I'm not telling I'm neutral. I don't believe in neutrality. I believe in objectivity. And you can't be neutral in an inequitous society when there is a rich and poor, when there is a rich and a middle class, when there is an exploiter and exploited, when there is justice and injustice, when there is satya and asatya, when there is dharma and adharma, can you be neutral? Is it right when there is an oppressor and an oppressed? Can you be neutral? You
No.
can't be neutral and you should not be neutral. It is a criminal. It is certainly criminal to be neutral. So you can't be. You have to be objective. So how do you be objective? You should have a conviction. So that conviction is not a prejudice. Conviction is adherence to truth. Conviction is an impassionate perusal of facts surrounding a particular point. and a temperament to alter your opinion if the
Yes.
things prove to be otherwise. So you can't be prejudicial to something else. You should only be prejudicial to truth. So to the extent possible, when I look at any particular phenomenon, any particular policy prescription, any particular event or development, I would only think of two things. Firstly, what is truth in it, and how do you identify the truth? Second, am I truthful to the interest of the people at large? So if I'm truthful to the interest of the people at large, then that should be the motive, that should be the objective. So objectivity doesn't mean neutrality. Objectivity essentially means be conscious of truth and be closer to truth and be strong to the strongly defend the rights of the disenfranchised, disempowered, underprivileged, deprived, and those who cannot defend themselves.
Yes. Sir, so effective communication is a fundamental trait of successful political leaders. How does an aspiring politician prepare himself or herself to become an effective communicator?
Sometimes the ability to communicate is inherent in one's personality. Otherwise, you can still cultivate. To be an effective communicator, you should have a clarity of thought. So, without a clarity of thought, you cannot be effective. I have seen many great people who are considered to be great, and intellectuals also. They talk about bad things in society, but they don't identify the person responsible for it, the party responsible for it, the politician responsible for it. What is the use? If you just say that something is going wrong and you don't identify who is responsible for that, what is responsible for that, then whom will you fight with? So such politician will definitely fail. So you should communicate when you can only communicate when you have a clarity of thought and you have no fear, no favor, no inhibition, no hesitation, so no special favor, no prejudice. So when you do not have these things, obviously you are plain. So you will communicate in a very plain manner. Secondly, in-depth study. Even if you have a clarity of thought and purpose, you should have a clarity of thought and purpose. But that's not essential. That's not enough. It is only one prerequisite. What is more essential is your ability to study things. And in depth, many politicians, though they have an ability, they are so engrossed in public life that they hardly find time or they hardly identify a private time to study a particular thing. So read more, talk more, interact with people more, speak more, observe more, and obviously that will allow you to communicate. So if you are not doing these things, you cannot communicate. And whenever you communicate, and I think not from your perspective, not from the perspective of the source, you have to think from the perspective of the audience. When you don't understand something, you can't communicate. So unless you understand something, you can't communicate. So try to understand things, try to logically think, try to study more and more, try to interrogate yourself. The best way to communicate is to interrogate yourself. When you continuously interrogate yourself, you will be confidently answering others' questions also. So before you communicate to the people, you should communicate to yourself. You should interrogate yourself.
Sir, so you are a notable influencer in television debates and social media. What are the fundamentals of using such technology for effective political communication?
Well, I don't really know much about technology. What I really know is the ability how to speak. Well, I've been doing it when there were only print media was there, and I was doing it in the television. I'm doing it in social media. Frankly speaking, I'm not capable of really understanding the technology of social media so effectively. But what I've been doing is I was not resisting. So one thing I had learned is always embrace new things in life, especially always embrace technology. Technology, whether you like it or not, will influence your life. So I've seen many politicians who, especially ideologically dogmatic politicians, who do not use technology at all. So you can't be. You have to be modern. When you are in Rome, you should look like a Roman. When you are in a modern age, you should be modern. So that kind of a mental framework is required. So there are people to help you in terms of how the technology works. There are people to tell you how technology can be effective. But you should at least have a mental framework, and you should not have any kind of mental blocks for against the using technology. Secondly, you should have the kind of an urge to communicate and an ability to reach. So many politicians think that people should come to listen to you. So you should go where the people are. So when people are in Facebook, you can't be in your house. When people are in Instagram, you can't be in some other place. When people are on YouTube, you can't remain in your own shell. So obviously, when you have this kind of a mental framework to accept and appreciate the changing contours of the world around you, well, you will definitely be successful. There are professionals to help you in terms of the use of technology. But be adaptive to the technology. When I used to write a 1500 word article when I was writing for a newspaper, but when I'm writing for a web page, I can't write 1500 words. I write 300-400 words. So when I speak in a public platform, I used to speak for 45 minutes or 1 hour speeches also. But I can't give 1 hour speeches always on YouTube. So you should know that people have a very little attention span. So you have to speak for 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Still, I speak for a longer period, quite some time, because when I find it especially essential to teach something, to educate something. So other than that, normally I also speak for 5 to 7 minutes, 8 minutes, because I know that lower the time span, the better will be the communication. So that is how you have to learn the art of communication. But the basic techniques are the same. Whether you write, whether you speak, the basic technique is be effective in your communication. You have a clarity of thought and purpose, and logically think and logically arrange your ideas. Interrogate yourself more than anyone else interrogates. In fact, I ask more questions to myself. And in the age of social media, don't be bullied by the trolls. This is a very important thing in a social media. In print or television, you don't have this problem. In social media, there are trolls who do not want you to speak. Understand that if you are more trolled, that means you are more popular. So as your popularity increases, there are more number of people to scandalize you, to intimidate you, to make you feel ashamed. But when you give in to their interest, when you run away, it is they who are winning. So let the trolls not win. You win. You defeat the trolls. The best way to defeat the trolls is ignore them and speak with much more vigor. Obviously, they will run away. When I first started my YouTube, I used to face a lot of problems from the trolls. Still I face, but subsequently it reduced only because they have realized that I will not run away. And as they troll me more, I'll speak more. So once they understood that there is a law of diminishing returns is operating for them, so they stopped actually, some of them stopped even trolling. But still, new trolls always come.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Sir, finding sustenance and doing active politics often is a challenge for ordinary youth. As a result, so many people do not choose politics as their career. In such a scenario, how does an aspiring politician manage his or her finances?
Well, it's difficult to, there are two ways of looking at finances. Finances, well, it is difficult to earn anything in politics unless you are in an electoral position. If you are in electoral position, you will at least get your salary. I'm not talking about honest people. Dishonest politicians, they find million ways to earn. But honest politicians, unless they get elected to some post, they will not get any income. So, but if I'm when I first became an MLC, I was getting 40,000 as my salary when I was getting 80,000 as a professor in university. So I was losing 40,000 rupees. And I still remember I took my daughter to a very good school, and when they told me about the fees, I was simply scared and came out. I thought I can't get my daughter educated in that school because my income doesn't permit. So I used to teach every day from 8 to 9:30 for some students who are aspiring for some examinations, writing some competitive examination, because 40,000 salary was not sufficient for me, where my children were still very young, and I need to sustain my family. So, and I lost 40,000 rupees. I used to get 80,000 salary. I lost 40,000 and reconciled to a lower income. Well, that is how you have to sacrifice sometimes. Well, now it is not the case. Now, even if I am elected tomorrow, so my salary as a professor is almost equal to that emoluments as a legislator. But it was very less when I got elected first time. So that is the first problem. So unless you have a good profession, good family background, good something, some financial stability, you can't just simply join politics at this point of time. So what I advise is you better have some kind of a stability in life. Don't give up life and enter politics. Politics is an ocean. Politics is a long journey. You really do not know, especially when it is honest politics, when it is clean politics, it is an uncharted territory. So don't jump into uncharted territory before having stability in your own life, because you will be doing injustice to the family and you will get frustrated at one point of time, all of that. So don't get frustrated by your idealism. Your idealism should not lead to a life of frustration. So have some kind of a stability in life, but still that doesn't mean you will not be into politics. You can still be active in public life in many ways. Even assuming that you are a software engineer, you can still be active in public life by speaking, by commenting. Well, you can comment even anonymously also if you think that your job will be affected. There are a million ways to contribute. And you can fight for the rights of the people around you. You can do some public service. You can even work for your colony, your associate, your apartments, your colony association, or you can work for the people around you. So some poor families around you. So you can work to improve the condition of a road in your locality. You can improve the condition of sanitation in your locality. This doesn't mean you need to be in politics. Obviously, what do you mean by politics? Politics is essentially public life. You can still be in public life without being in politics. So if you are a public spirited individual right from the day one, you can perhaps enter into political life once you get some kind of a stability in life.
Yeah. Sir, so your social and political life requires you to spend a lot of time with people and policy matters. How do you find a balance in life with regards to spending time with family and friends? And what did your ideal day look like when you were serving as an MLC?
Well, it is some. Let me be very frank. You have to sacrifice something to get something else. You can't have both egg and omelette. So it is not possible. You can't have egg and omelette. So if you sacrifice egg, you will have omelette. So you have to give up something. I have certainly given up my social life to a great extent. When as a legislator, and even if I'm not a legislator, in my role as a public intellectual, well, my family, especially my wife, is certainly a victim of that. I know that. But that is something which you have to. There's no way you can escape that. So you can balance by giving quality time to your family. So you may not give more time, but whatever less you give it, you can give a quality time to them. So once people realize, when your children realize what you are doing is for the sake of society, well, they will certainly appreciate. In fact, my son is applying for some business school. So when he was asked to write about his own story, he was giving this anecdote. and he was narrating his own feelings that as a child he was not he was worried why my father is not with me every day. So, but he realized after growing up as a child that my father is doing something for the cause of the people at large. So that inspired him. So he has narrated this experience in his applications when he was asked to write about his own story also. So that's what I'm telling you. You should feel, you should make your family feel that your work inspires them, your work brings them kind of a respect. My wife was also annoyed at sometimes. Well, so though she cooperates, but when she realized, when she goes out in society, when people start appreciating the work of her husband or father, or obviously they will feel happy with what you're doing. So your work should speak about you. Your work should convince your family. If you can't even convince your family, how can you convince the society at large? Well, sometimes it may be difficult to convince the family, but you can convince the society. But certainly, family are the first right on you. So, society has a right on you, but family also has a right on you. So, genuinely accept the fact that the family has a right on you. So, whatever you can give quality time to them, you can, your work should inspire them, your work should bring them more respect, and your work should bring them more regard in society. And that way you can balance your life and work. Work life balance is a very important thing, not just for a politician, but even for a businessman or any aspiring professional also. Many people in their careers give up the life for work, never give up life for work. Life and work are two things, and they mutually reinforce each other. Don't think that they're mutually exclusive, they're mutually inclusive.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, so, sir, like before asking the final question, I want to bring in Paul, sir. Sir, like Paul, sir, you have any more questions to add to ask?
You carry last question. You can.
Yeah. Okay. Sir, so finally, what more can be done to involve more youth in politics, and what is your message to budding political leaders?
The first thing, give up this kind of an illusion. Being in politics doesn't mean contesting elections. So contesting elections, becoming MLAs, MPs, that's not the only facet of politics. So don't be carried away with an impression that if you are in politics, you have to contest elections only. Politics essentially mean public life. You can still be in public life without contesting elections. You can still be in public life without sacrificing your personal life. How do we be part of some civil society initiative, be part of some civil society activism, be a representative of your own colony, be a representative of your own apartment, be a representative of your own people in your around you. Try to solve the problems, try to mediate between institutions of governance and the people, try to empower those who are disempowered, try to give some time and money which you can to the for the sake of those who cannot afford. So once you have this kind of a public spirited attitude, I'm sure you can be a successful politician also. The point is, I'm not worried whether you are successful or not. I am worried, I will not measure the success of a politician by the kind of posts or positions he or she holds. I will measure the success of a politician by the kind of change they have made in the lives of the people whom they are who have elected them to positions of power.
Yeah. Okay. So, thanks a lot, sir, for such engaging discussion. Your insights were very useful. We wish very best of luck from Indian School of Democracy for your upcoming MLC elections.